All right, we're recording. All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the TF podcast. Really excited. We've been producing some amazing content here over the last couple of days with everything that's been going on in the news, the global economy, COVID, and I'm super excited to get a different perspective that we haven't had on the show yet during this time. And I'm here with Kevin Kang and Carlos Betancourt, the managing partners and founders of BK Coin Capital. They're a hedge fund that manages crypto assets, and I'm really excited to welcome them. Please introduce yourself, guys.
Hey, Jonathan. Thanks for having us. Name's Kevin, as you know. Carlos and I started this fund about 2 years ago. When we first started the fund, the space was still binary, right? We weren't sure. Well, nobody was really sure if the space was still going to be around the next 3 to 5 years, but now we feel pretty comfortable it's binary now, and really excited to see the whole space come such a long way in terms of infrastructure and security, etc. My background is in equities and fixed income. Started my career at Alliance Bernstein as an assistant PM, and then went into another fund here in New York, managing a $5 billion portfolio, and then started BK Coin with Carlos 2 years ago.
Nice. How about you, Carlos?
Awesome. Thank you for having us. Appreciate that.
Of course.
I haven't seen you since your last event in Seattle. So
oh yeah, it's been a while.
I'm excited to chat with you. My background is primarily in commodities. I actually started my career at a hedge fund, primarily doing research, and moved on to be a junior trader at a small commodities shop in New York City. And then I subsequently took a role with AMCI, and I ran their North American, Latin America commodities trading team. And after that, I started my own brokerage, Yorkville Commodities. I did that for a few years, and then I partnered up with Kevin. We just saw a ton of opportunity in the space, and as Kevin mentioned, it was it was a little bit of a risk. I don't think anybody was expecting this move to happen so quickly. But as you see now, we have regulated products here in the States, like Backed, CME, ICE, and we're very excited about where this is going, and we continue to grow. We've had a great year so far, and obviously, now hunkering down, both kind of working from home, and as well as the rest of the team.
Yeah. So I can't apologize if you said this. How did you guys meet before?
Well, Kevin and I actually went to the same university down in Florida.
Got it.
So we had that mutual connection there, but we actually met in New York City back in 2013, I believe, was the first time we met.
Awesome. And so, you said that you had a background in commodities. There's obviously some parallels there with Bitcoin, right? Love to kind of understand that a little bit more and how you're thinking about that.
Yeah, I always get this question. Everybody continues to ask me, how do you get involved? But the reality was that back in the day, I kept commuting down from the Upper East Side to FIDI in New York. And I kept going by the lone Bitcoin store, ATM store. And I kept seeing the crowds getting bigger and bigger. And I was like, man, I need to figure out what's going on here.
Yeah.
So I have a little cousin that is a gamer. And so I call him up and I asked him, so tell me about this Bitcoin. And he's like, hey, I have a ton of Bitcoin. And I'm like, but what is it? And so he started telling me, well, I'm actually paying for stuff online using it. And so I started doing a little bit more research. And what really captivated me was the fact that there were going to be so many to be mined, right? And to me, when you compare that to a commodity, let's just take gold or copper, for example. There's a finite amount of that resource under earth, right? And the moment that's done, then it just becomes a supply and demand game, right? And that was really fascinating to me. And that's when I really started diving in. I, read Satoshi's paper. And at the same time, Kevin and I were hanging out in New York City, and we struck up conversation, and we decided to kind of dive deeper into it, and he had an interest in it, and so that was kind of the beginning of everything.
Yeah, my assumption is that, obviously I'm not a commodities trader, but my assumption is that it's rather formulaic, right? And so you kind of just input Bitcoin into, similar paradigm or similar formulas, how you might think of commodities. Is that a fair assumption?
It's a fair assumption. I think that the biggest hurdle has really been when it comes down to fundamentals, right? Bitcoin came out of nowhere, whereas we have tens of years in every single commodity of production numbers, knowing where the commodities are going, who's buying them, everything that has to do with the supply chain portion of commodities, which is very important. We never had that for Bitcoin, right? It just kind of popped up. Nobody really knew very much about it, and finding the underlying fundamental things to look at has obviously become quite difficult. And over the years, it's getting a little bit better. We have a very robust way of storing data. We spend a ton of resources in building our tech stack, and one of the number one things that we always preach is retaining that data so that we can go back and perform even more research on it before we go ahead and deploy any capital.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely makes sense. Just because we were talking, you were bringing up gold and other commodities. Let's kind of dive right into that when we think about Bitcoin. Often Bitcoin and gold get compared to each other. We all know where we're at right now, and with the economy and the Dow going down, about 30% so far, and gold has gone down a little bit. Bitcoin has gone down. I'd love if one of you could kind of talk about either like the parallels to gold or the non-factors between it, and then how might one think of how Bitcoin operates in that capacity overall.
Yeah,
That's an interesting question, and the biggest argument the last couple of years was that Bitcoin was digital gold, right?
Yeah.
And the last couple of weeks, when everyone was, rushing for safe haven, everything went down. Everything was being sold off. Everyone was rushing for cash. So as you saw in the market, they sold equities to gold, to even Bitcoin. Everything went down in parallel. And the argument that Bitcoin is uncorrelated asset, it still stands. But the last 2 weeks, U.S. equities and Bitcoin had 0.91 correlation, which is basically completely correlated. So I think it's going to be an interesting time to find out how this plays out, because even after the 08 and 09 financial crisis, Bitcoin went down a lot. But then, the gold went down a lot. But then after that, gold had a bull run for the next couple of years. I think we may see a similar narrative the next couple of years when,
and then perhaps
bottom.
And then perhaps Bitcoin, joins that, I guess, is kind of what your thought is, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is the way, when kind of the market recedes like this is, people, you want to have a stronger cash position, which is obvious. We all know that part. But when people start getting back into the market, gold is one of the first things that they've been heading to. Is that correct? Gold and silver?
Yep.
Okay. So with that, what are your thoughts? Do you think Bitcoin will follow similar suit now? Because this is really the first time Bitcoin has experienced a quote unquote financial downturn. Do you see Bitcoin operating in a similar function?
I certainly do. I think CME and BAP came out with their futures and options at a perfect time, and institutional investors are gonna take a look when the market bottoms and when they're looking to deploy again. They're gonna take a serious look at Bitcoin again. When it comes to altcoins, probably not to begin with for institutional investors, but at least on Bitcoin and some for Ether, I think there's a huge potential to run up.
Yeah, Yeah. I'd love to shift the conversation, just going back to those institutional investors and just investors in general, and perhaps even from like an LP standpoint, right? So, before we go into how the market is today, what's typically that conversation with a quote unquote traditional investor who, might be risk averse and see Bitcoin as a volatile asset. Like, what is that conversation like, or how does someone like that just determine, like, hey, you know what, I want to participate in like a hedge fund, and then from there, we'll kind of move on to like what's the sentiment today.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the most important things to note is that we are seeing a change in those institutional investors.
Mm-hmm.
The conversations we were having about 2 years ago, maybe even 12 months ago, are very different than the conversations we're having now. The way that we approach it is education first. I would say over 50% of the investors that we're talking to have had some kind of exposure to crypto, and ironically it comes directly from their kids. So their kids are the ones kind of driving the conversations in their households, and they just don't know enough about it, right? So
Yeah.
the first times that we have conversations with institutional clients is really just kind of walking them through what it is, and having that understanding, and then from there it becomes a little bit more pointed as to what we do. And one of the things that we are well known for is our strategy. We run a market neutral strategy, and we developed our strategy specifically for institutions, right? So we're trying our best to perform even through times like this. It's been actually quite well for us over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah. Are you able to share your performance overall, and like how you compare and so forth?
Yeah, I'll let Kevin take this one.
Yeah, so since we launched, our official launch date of the fund was November of 2018. And since we launched, we're up around 56%. And last year, we're up 23%. And I think the biggest question is how we performed this month when the market went down close to 50%. Luckily, we're up around 3% this month. It's been a volatile month, right? Because even though we run market neutral strategy, doesn't mean we never lost money during the month. The last couple of weeks, we had some down days and up days, but we really built a solid team together. Every time we make a trade, we do a deep dive with every team member, every colleague that we have on our team that all come from traditional finance background. So we've been able to really navigate through this market. And luckily, we are above water.
That's good. Can you explain that to someone who, perhaps doesn't quite understand how that could be? Like, how could you possibly be up 3% if, Bitcoin went down 50%? How does that work?
We first launched, we focused on inter-exchange arbitrage, right? So with the minimal risk, buying and selling at different exchanges and capturing that mispricing. But as the space grew and more institutional players came into the space, that arb is now slim to none. So not what we're focusing on now is more on the derivative side. So playing with futures and options. So to give you a simple idea, let's say March futures or June futures trading at in contango starts at 5,000. June futures trading at 5,500. So we go long spot, short futures, and try to capture that spread. But throughout this month, we've been net long and net short. We've been flipping around for quite a bit. When it went from 10K to 9K, we're still net long where we lost a little bit. But when it broke 9K, which is when net shorts, meaning we will be profiting when the market goes down, right? So, and then we just kept switching from net long to net short, and then when we finally broke 7K, just stayed in net short. So, meaning we were shorting more than we were long.
Got it.
So that's why we got up, 30, 40%. But that's our goal, right? Our strategy is designed so we can absolute return around 1 to 5% month after month. And And yeah, we're pretty happy about that because when the market's up 50%, we're going to underperform because we're going to be only up single digits. But when the market's down significantly, I think that's when our strength kind of shines.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what's the point of view from an LP, right? So I'm assuming you're getting phone calls of LPs thinking like, you were losing all my money, or like, what's going on? Like, why, like even maybe they want a capital call or cash out. Like, what are those conversations right now? With big, and not because of you guys, of course, but because like, hey, it's scary when you see a number slice in half and then their existing portfolio in traditional markets is probably getting slaughtered as well. What have those calls been like?
Yeah, I've talked to every single one of our LPs over the last week or so. It's very fluid. We have LPs that are very sophisticated, and I think that the most important thing, and one thing that separates us from the rest, is we don't necessarily view our LPs strictly as our clients. We actually talk to them on a regular basis, and they can call us at any time. They have our cell phone numbers. We pick up the phone. We have a good conversation with them. But a lot of them have been around the block for a little while, right? So they've been through 2000s, 2008, 2009, and now they're faced with this. Part of the reason they chose us is because we're looking really for a partnership and not necessarily, hey, here's my allocation, now I'm your client, and that's where it goes.
Yeah.
We really enjoy who we work with. We actually talk to them on a regular basis, and the conversations have been very fluid. They've asked us kind of what we're seeing in the market, where the opportunities are, and just as much as the market's been down, that also creates a ton of opportunities. And coming from commodities world, or equities and fixed income, we see opportunities everywhere. If we just talk for a second on the equity side of things, we're looking at companies that have incredible balance sheets and great solid business models that are, trading at a 50% discount because of everything that's been happening over the last 2 to 3 weeks. I find that to be a huge opportunity. And same goes for Bitcoin. My personal opinion was that this year we were going to test, potentially all-time highs. And I had a lot of conviction that we were going to see 10,000 going into the halving. My conviction hasn't changed, but the situation around that conviction has changed dramatically. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to, no longer be bullish on, the outcome of Bitcoin, 6, 9, 12 months from now. So I think a lot of our investors are savvy enough and sophisticated enough, and they're not panic sellers. And we tend to really also pick and choose who we want to work with, and I think we do that a little bit more than most other hedge funds.
Yeah. When someone in like one of these LPs, like if they were to, like, so let's say like an LP wanted to like get out of their position or so forth, or get out of the fund, because of the way I'm understanding is because the way that you have your market strategy overall, it doesn't necessarily even matter what the price of Bitcoin is because of the arbitrage and the trading that you're doing, right? So it's not like you're not a bank and you're not just like storing this crypto and just happen to just have it for them. So like if it's 3,000 or 20,000, you're still essentially pulling the levers to ratchet it up and down for a trading perspective. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would think so. There are multiple layers to that, right? So
Sure.
When we take on an investor, obviously there's a lockup period, and they really can't pull their money out because it'll disrupt the way that we're investing the funds, right? However, there are times where certain clients will be able to withdraw their money, and we do a quarterly withdraw for certain clients. And there's also other sets of clients that are looking at the space very differently than the common folk, right? They want their Bitcoin holdings to continue growing, so they see the underlying asset. They're not seeing the dollar sign.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as we're performing and increasing their Bitcoin holdings, we're performing. So there's a lot of layers to that. We have not had any calls from any investors so far to, panicking or anything like that.
That's good.
So we're
That's
very
good.
fortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah, to give you a better idea of what Carlos just mentioned about different sets of clients is, so basically our main fund's return is based on US dollar terms, right? And we have a couple of SMAs, meaning separately managed accounts outside our fund for certain clients. And those clients don't care where Bitcoin is trading at right now. So let's say they give us 100 BTC, right, to invest in. As long as that 100 BTC goes up to 101 and 102 month after month, it's their goal, accumulating Bitcoin. So the trading strategy is slightly different for that account, but our main account, the return is reported in dollars.
So I mean, they're kind of like a high net worth hodler, right? Like in a way.
It's actually a fund of fund.
Oh, okay.
So they're
Okay.
sophisticated institutional investors, but they have a very interesting view, and they have a huge confidence in Bitcoin.
Yeah, very cool. Let's move the conversation to just the broader market, right? And so, there's so much going on in the world right now. Obviously, people are feeling insecure in the market, and part of that, a large part of that, actually, I should say, has to do with what's going on with COVID-19. But some of these things were kind of coming towards this direction, right? Like perhaps not to this extremity, of course, but I'd love to understand, kind of what you guys have been thinking about just with the overall market, where we're at today. And just what does this mean? Like, where are we right now? Like, how do you console or how do you talk about this with people at where we're at? And not again, not a crypto sense, but just the overall financial markets. You guys obviously have an understanding that from your different backgrounds as well.
I think from my perspective, I mean, if you just look at where we are today, we basically wiped off everything from the first Trump time at the White House, right? So
I do find that personally a little bit funny, not to like show politics, but I just think it's funny because it's been like a big part of the platform for him, right? And so all of a sudden that get wiped down, or I shouldn't say funny. It's ironic. It's a better word.
But hey, it's unprecedented, right? Nobody was expecting this a month ago, right?
No.
We knew that it had, big implications. We just didn't know the extent of it, right?
Right.
I think if we are looking generally, we're probably lagging a lot of countries. So I think there is still a good potential for it to get worse before it gets better in the States.
When you, to clarify, when you're saying lagging from from the cases of COVID or lagging from an economic standpoint?
Correct. From the cases of COVID.
Yeah.
So, meaning if you look at the numbers, which are increasing on a day-to-day basis, I mean, less than a week ago, we only had less than 3,000 cases, and now we're up to almost 8,000.
Yeah.
You live in Seattle. Seattle is a great place to kind of take a look at. It's almost the epicenter in the U.S.
Yeah.
The first.
I'm in my bunker right now.
There you go. The first week or so in Seattle, there wasn't. There were cases reported, nothing really extraordinary. Last week we had 30 deaths confirmed. This week, 55. That's a lot. That's a huge jump. I think that there are states that have not felt kind of the pressure that some states like Washington are experiencing right now. So a lot of the entire economy has been kind of following, in a way, the fear that some people are feeling because it's expanding pretty quickly. And, I just don't see a scenario where things are going to get better unless we really, truly take this seriously and we hunker down like China did.
Yeah.
And today was, in a way, we got some good news. Again, Seattle, right? Home of Starbucks. So they had to make a very tough decision a couple of weeks ago, and they shut off all of their stores in China. Those same stores are 90% of them are back on already. So I think as long as we follow the procedure and not continuously panic, and stay home, practice self-distancing, I think we'll be okay. But my number one concern is the American worker. And I think until the White House comes through with a true plan to put money in people's pockets, nothing's going to matter.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they can put as many zeros as they want, and the Fed can print as much money as they want, but they're not spending it on everyday items like we would. So
Right.
I think that's my take.
Yeah, and Kevin, maybe you can answer this, or Carlos also. Help us understand the logic, or how when the Fed thinks about reducing rates, right? So like they reduced the rate to zero on, what was it, Sunday? And then the market goes down 3,000, right? So why is that, right? So for someone that doesn't quite understand, it seems as though the market doesn't have confidence still. And so if that was the case, I would like to think that those in the Fed would have an understanding of that's very likely the outcome, right? Have analysts, I don't know, people that think about that scenario. So one, why do that? And then, why not do helicopter money like Carlos is kind of talking about, like right after the zero interest or before?
Yeah, so when the Fed lowered the rates to zero, cut it by 100 basis points over Sunday, people are sophisticated, right? So they knew, even the government was panicking. They knew, okay, something's wrong with the market, right? So I think that was the main reason that the market went down by 3% on Monday. But also it brings a whole nother conversation about how long can this last? They're out of ammunition, right? Are they going to are they going to go negative? Well, we know it doesn't work. It didn't work in Europe, right? They're still struggling to, the last 10 years, they barely eked out any GDP growth. And even with all the stimulus across the world, I think, but also it's a cheap debt. Every investors and companies are addicted to this cheap, basically free money. And what did they do with those cheap money? They just bought back their stocks. So stocks were at all-time highs. But so it brings a whole another conversation of how much is a dollar worth. So when Bitcoin was first started, or when Bitcoin hit 20,000 in 2017, a lot of institutional investors will just laugh at Bitcoin and say, okay, how do you come up with the fundamental value of Bitcoin? It's just an internet money. It's fugazi, right? But you can make the same argument about US dollars. How much is it worth? It's not backed by gold anymore. And when the Fed just keeps printing out money, and that's when the modern monetary theory came about. Yeah. But is it sustainable? I don't know. But I think that's why people are taking Bitcoin more seriously, because it doesn't need government intervention. Yeah, it went down by almost 50% the last couple of weeks, but just holding out. Bitcoin doesn't need government intervention or any kind of policy. It's just powered by the people around the globe, which is something super powerful.
Yeah. Carlos, any thoughts on that?
Hey, did you get any emails about COVID-19 from Satoshi or Bitcoin?
No.
I got emails from every CEO of every company in America this week.
Yeah.
I think it speaks volume that something is actively being traded right now, changing hands, and there's no intervention.
Yeah.
So I think, to Kevin's point, it's very powerful. And, there's a lot of things that we need to rethink that we may not be doing, and just bailing companies out time after time is just not going to work. At the end of the day, we will have to bail multiple industries this time around.
Yeah.
Seattle has Boeing. They're probably going to be the number one candidate to get bailed out.
Yeah.
But then you start talking about all of the retailers out there that are really hurting. And man, we're in a very tough position. And hey, I think Bitcoin's here to stay. And in a way, it really brings a little bit of peace to my heart that I went down this road, and I took a chance to start this company, and now we're kind of looking at everything else, and man, it's not looking pretty right now.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I agree. Bitcoin, I haven't checked it today, but my assumption is it's somewhere around what, 5,300 or something. Does that sound about right?
Yep.
And everything else has kind of gone down like a tiny bit, right? Or like, I don't know how much, but like I saw stock. Well, last I saw they were down, but anyway, so it's like this flatlining of Bitcoin at this point in time, like arguably is showing its strength, right? Like the fact that like there's more volatility right now in some of these other markets than Bitcoin itself. So I find that super interesting and fascinating overall. What else? Let's see. What else was I going to ask you guys? Oh, I want to going back to kind of like the overall strategy from a hedge fund perspective, or how you operate Bitcoin is, where do you get your Bitcoin, for example? Like, are you going straight to exchanges? Are you going to miners? Is it a little bit of everything? How are you getting your Bitcoin to begin with? One, and then two, what is your thoughts? Actually, let's talk about that. And I got another fun question for you after that.
Okay. Yeah. So we are connected to over 30 exchanges around the world, and some of the biggest liquidity providers, right? So talk about Galaxies of the world. B2C2 are one of the bigger guys, some of the OTC desk, and miners as well. So we use every channel possible, actually, and try to get the best price possible. So I think that's one of our strengths, to get the best execution, right? Yeah, maybe only 10 basis points difference or even less, but that adds up. If you're placing 100 trades a day, those couple of bips of savings add up over time. And yeah, to answer your question, yeah, we go through all avenues, try to get the best price possible.
Yeah. So, and then the second part of that was going to be, what are you guys' thoughts on like virgin Bitcoins? You know what I'm talking about there? Like, so basically like mine Bitcoins that have never touched like another wallet. And like, do you have anybody that asks for those sort of things? I know there's some banks out there that have interest in that. Is that something you guys have heard much about? Or am I just making that up right now?
I don't know. There was a thing.
No,
I haven't heard of those. But if you want to send me some Virgin BTC, I'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically under the pretense that, like, if you receive this Bitcoin, it wasn't used for nefarious activities because you're getting it like straight from the from the mine, as opposed to like having it transfer hands, which I find ironic because cash. Right. Just how cash works in general. And so maybe it's like the thought of if they're just zeros in a spreadsheet or in a computer, it's not as bad as like the actual cash. Although that's how I do like to get paid, is in duffel bags of cash. I've never been paid in duffel bags of cash, but that would be my preferred method.
When we come down to Austin for TF6, we'll bring you a ton of ones.
There you go. There you go. Well, cool guys, this has been great. Before we end, I'd love to open up to you guys if you have any kind of questions or things that you want to leave our listeners with, and how they should be thinking, or kind of pieces of advice, kind of give you the floor.
Yeah, I would like to, just tell everybody to adhere by the rules for the next couple of weeks. I think that's very important to kind of get our economy back going. But also for those folks that have been kind of getting beat up in the markets, don't panic. Stay strong, and hopefully seek the sound advice. And there's a lot of experts in every single market. There are equity experts, there are fixed income experts, there's crypto experts. Seek some help. But there's no need to panic and run away. The American economy is the strongest one in the world. It'll stay that way, and we just need to weather the storm. And follow us on Twitter, BK Coin Capital, and any questions that you guys have, feel free to shoot them over.
Awesome. Did he wrap it up for you, Kevin? Or you got anything you want to say?
Yeah, I think it covered just about anything. So
you didn't leave anything for Kevin.
If the government decides to hand out checks, whether it be $1,000 or $2,000, be smart with it, right? I'm not gonna say what to invest in, and no one knows when the market's gonna bottom, but it's closer than top, right? So I would say whenever someone has a liquid asset, just buy up, whether it be stocks or Bitcoin, just buy as much as you can, because when you look back 5-10 years down the road, I think that'll be a good decision.
Yeah. I have one last question for you guys. In your portfolio, what percentage of it is Bitcoin compared to alts?
Are you in our personal portfolios or
no, from the fund perspective? Is that something you share?
We can we really don't go into too many alts.
Yeah.
What we really focus on is trying to trade the top 10 coins by liquidity.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's some restriction there. However, we do place bets on different alts from time to time.
Yeah. Cool.
But I would say 99% of them are around Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin.
Yeah. That's what I would assume. Cool. Awesome. Well, hey guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us and be supportive of TF and what we do and our conference and events like you have in the past and you have in the future. We'll definitely be talking and hopefully having these types of conversations more often. For everybody listening, thank you for listening. You'll be able to see this actually live this is live, of course. But make sure that you're subscribed to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you like to listen to podcasts, and you can hear this there as well. Awesome. Well, I'm Jonathan G. Blanco. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to y'all soon.
Thank you, Jonathan. Take care.
Cool.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks, guys.